let me tell you something.
brother.
This
Brother.
this
I had
is
to.
yeah, brother.
All right, welcome back to Long Island's number one pro wrestling broadcast. Monty DeFaro, seen here only out of Indie Music TV, out of Ronkonkoma, Long Island. We want to say welcome, Mr. Jim Brunzell. Thank you, sir, for taking the time out on our lovely little
Well,
show.
thanks for having me.
Recently, and I'm not sure if you knew this fellow, but we lost our friend from the show, J.J. Maguire. He was the co-writer of a lot of the themes for WWE, along with Jimmy Hart back in the early 90s. Did you have any memories? Did you ever come across J.J. Maguire? And if not, what is your opinion on the importance of having a really good intro song for a wrestler?
Oh, geez. Well, I know your first question, Jimmy. I didn't meet J.J. Maguire, but I'm very familiar with Jimmy Hart
Mm-hmm.
and knew his background and music and sure there was you know you have a catchy tune going to the ring, people boom automatically, as soon as they hear those opening notes, they know, the killer bees are coming or the hearts are coming. And then, with Hulk, with his theme song, they, as soon as boom, they heard that he was coming. And it was great to do. We tried two or three different songs. And the problem was that if they were, famous artists that had that song, you couldn't use it because then you would have to pay him.
Mm-hmm.
And Vince didn't want to do that, so Vince sort of wound up making up his own music for a lot of, or maybe he had Jimmy Hart do it. He probably did, for a lot of his talent. But I know Brian and I came out to a couple different things. So, but you're right. It sure adds to your the selling of your presence.
Were you ever happy with your music, or what was your take on the songs you went out to over the years? Any particular one?
Well, see, I wanted Springsteen music, and right away I couldn't do it. And then Brian wasn't too hip on it, and McMahon wasn't either. So
yeah,
it didn't either way. I thought, well, if we come out to something, we come out to something. So
right. Unfortunately, over the last few days, we've lost one of the all-time greats, Razor Ramon, also, of course, known as Scott Hall. Can you give us or share with us any personal memories of Scott Hall and his impact on this business?
Well, he was very unique because he came in as Razor Ramon and got over extremely well. Good-looking guy, very athletic, had good presence in the ring, could talk, and boom, he took off. And I know he had, throughout his career, he had a horrible battle with substance abuse, and it took its toll on him. And you just add these number of people that succumb to substance abuse, whether it be alcohol or drugs, and it's amazing because there was, there's probably 2 to 3 dozen wrestlers in the last 20 years that have passed because of substance abuse. And I know that he didn't die of substance abuse, but I'm sure it had a critical play on his life. And also, I know, the bumps and bruises, and, he had a hip transplant, or hip replacement, and then, got blood clots and had a couple of heart attacks and wound up on a ventilator, and then they took him off. So I mean, you just never know, and all of us who spent so much time in the ring, and I have figured that I've had close to 5,000 matches in 27 years,
Wow.
and all those matches I did, I did a lot of drop kicking and stuff like that, so I ruined my knees and I ruined my shoulders, and consequently, I'm paying for that price now. Could be a lot worse, but I'll be 73 in August, and I thank the Lord for a very blessed life that I've had with a great family relationship with my wife and my kids, and also I still stay close with the number of some of the wrestlers that I was real close with, and I'm very active in my kids' life and my two grandsons. So, I'm pretty happy being retired now.
So it's fair to say, though, that if you could start over, Jim Brunzell would have still been Jim Brunzell, the wrestler. You would not have chosen a different life.
Well, I wanted to play pro football, but I wasn't good enough. So
Okay.
I had
Okay.
and it's funny because I remember when that 30-30 movie came out, a documentary on Ric Flair, and we went to the opening of it in Minneapolis, and after we saw it, I just I looked at it and I thought, geez, I shook my head, and then I said to Greg, I said, if Rick had it to do all over again, he'd do it the same way, and Greg said, yeah, he would. So, I mean. I know, Rick I think Rick is 73 now. He might be closing in on 74, but he's still got his mug out there, and he's still hooing with everybody, and, more power to him.
So last time you were in studio, you were with your partner, Brian Blair. Could you fill the fans in? How's Brian doing? I know he's gone through some really tough times, the passing of his son, and he's had some health issues. Could you share with the fan how Brian's doing?
Well, I talked to him a couple times, maybe once every 7 to 10 days, and if we're not talking, we're emailing or texting, and he's had 4 or 5 back and neck surgeries. And then the last time he had a surgery, he wound up getting an infection called osteomyelitis in his backbone. He damn near died. He was in the hospital for 4 or 5 weeks. And so he lost a lot of weight. And, the fact that, having to deal with the loss of his son this past summer is just horrifying for anybody, any parent to think that could happen, and then somebody that it did, and it was horrible. So right now he's in a good space. We're going to go to next week. We're going to go to Dallas for the WrestleMania WrestleCon down there a couple days, and it's always interesting to go to those because. Actually, the only reason why I go is because I want to see the guys that, we worked with, so many years ago, and you wind up seeing a lot of those guys. And I know that we're not going to be going to the WrestleMania matches, that's for sure. But Vincent probably charges $2,000 for the nosebleed.
For parking.
Nosebleed seats.
No, that's for parking. What are you talking about?
He'd want us to park the cars.
Right.
Oh,
right.
man.
That's the thing with
Poor Vince.
Poor Vince? Forget that. Oh, my Lord. Jim, I'm not sure if you're watching the current product, but me and Mike are on a tangent lately with AEW. Would you like to weigh in on the use of fake blood and fake thumbtacks? Any thoughts? Fake blood.
Oh God! Well, I haven't watched. I see the picture out there, and I remember a time, and I'm trying to think of his name now, and he lives up in Connecticut. Jesus, gosh, he's a Hall of Famer, and he wrestled in a couple of names, and he had the puppets with his hand.
Foley, Mick Foley,
Yeah.
Mick Foley, yeah.
Yes, Mick Foley.
Foley's from Long Island. Not that we're proud of that, but
Is he? Oh, I thought he lived in Connecticut.
Whatever, semantics.
Yeah.
Who really cares? But go ahead, Jim.
But I remember him doing all that crazy stuff,
Yeah, Yeah.
on the glass and and the tacks, and I thought that guy isn't going to be able to walk when he's 65 years old, you know. And so far, I haven't heard he's had any surgery, so maybe maybe he's bouncing the right way.
Yeah.
But
Maybe he
I,
was just born to
I
bounce.
yeah, he was born to bounce with. There'll be a song. G-Man will come out with a rap on that.
G-Man's going to come out with a rap, Born to Bounce. That's great.
Yes, born to bounce, baby. So,
Unbelievable.
I don't know. I did a documentary last week with A&E on Khosrow Vaziri, the Iron Sheik,
Yeah.
Okay.
and they said, "Do you have any stories about the Iron Sheik?" And I said, "Yes, I do." So I said, I said, "You want the good ones or the bad ones?"
All of them.
He said, "Well,
Yeah.
sort of mix them in." And I told him, I said, "Well, I had my worst match with Khosrow, and I said I had a match where he choked me out in the ring with a tag team rope, and then as I was just barely conscious, he threw me through the second and third rope, and I landed, and my head bounced, and I had 29 stitches in this eyebrow here, and I got up and I thought, what in the heck happened, and Cosmo, he was trying to figure out how I did it, how it was my fault, but he couldn't. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it was an interesting interview, and we talked for about an hour and 5 minutes. But there's another guy who's put up with a lot of stuff, and his daughter was taken, and drugs were involved, and he had a horrible ankle, and he never fixed, and he's almost crippled now. But I heard from these people that he's got over 600,000 followers on Instagram.
Right.
So
Right.
he's doing pretty good, I guess.
When you came up here to the WWE or WWF, what kind of was that a
Yes.
culture shock to you? Because now you're
my
working
God.
340 days a year.
This is the honest to gospel truth, and I don't know if I showed you this the last time, but I wrote this book a couple years ago, and it's called Madlands,
Yes.
and I published it myself from Blurb, and in here is 46 stories, and I document just about everything, all the interesting stories, and they're true. But Brian and I wrestled for 3.5 years. We averaged 27 days a month.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I have that on my books, 27 days a month. I remember we went 52 days straight, and then Greg Valentine broke my hand in Rockford, Illinois. So I had 2 days off, and then I came back with a cast on, and the Bees won more matches with using my cast to clothesline than we did with any drop kicks.
How was Razor like when you came back to the WWF in 1992?
When I came back, I had my own business in White Bear. It was called Jumping Jim Brunzell's Gym, and I had a good nut per month that I had to make, and so it was advantageous for me to wrestle part-time with the WWE. So whenever any babyface got hurt, or somebody got suspended or whatever, they'd call me in for a couple, 2 weeks, 3 weeks at a time, and I'd make good money. So although one of the things that Vince did to me, and it bothered me, was he put me in with these guys, and some of them were on TV, and he wanted me to put them over 1, 2, 3 in the middle of the ring. And first I thought, well, if a heel beats a babyface in the middle of the ring, 1, 2, 3, first of all, that doesn't say much about the babyface. And a heel should do something, to violate in some way or other that his opponent, in order to beat him, to maintain the heat on him. So that was one thing that I had to deal with. And I remember, you can look this match up. It's it was let's see, oh, what's his name? Doggone it. Randy Savage and I had a match on TV. It was on one of the first Monday Night Raws, and I knew and he had what's her name? Not his wife, but the I can't
Sherry?
remember what's her name. I can't. Sherry.
Sherry Martel.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes. So she was in his corner,
Okay.
and we had a hell of a match. And I remember we did a little series, and he jumped over me, and I came back and I hit him right in the mouth with a drop kick. And he got up and he was spitting blood, and I thought, oh Jesus, here we go. But
Oh boy.
we had a hell of a match, and I'll never forget. After the match, we went through the curtain, and Vince McMahon was right there, and he said, "Gentlemen," he said, "that's the best TV match I've ever seen." So I don't know if he was just blowing smoke, but it was a good match. So you can watch it. It's probably 12, 13 minutes long on YouTube, but it was an excellent match, and you know, Randy gave me a lot at the match, and he was a true professional. And there was another guy who died way too soon. And but Razor Ramon, when he came back, when you get over in New York and you get a little cocky, and he was a little, well, he wanted to be real dominant in the match, and again, I don't appreciate that, and it does nothing for the heel to try to out wrestle the babyface. All it does is demean the baby face, and it actually confuses the wrestling fan. So
The bookings today must drive you crazy if you are familiar with today's wrestling, and even over the last 10 plus years, there's this 50-50 booking. What's your take on that? The neutrality of characters. You can't grasp onto the character, the wrestler, with a 50-50.
everybody's the same, Jimmy.
Right.
If you watch somebody, and I'm talking about AEW and WWE, if you watch these guys come out and all their interviews are choreographed to the comma, they all are brave and strong, and there's no weakness there. There's no humility, and that's what Vince has been successful in creating. He's created these superstars that he calls them, and they're all the same. I mean, you look at them, all of them, and the format is about the same. And I don't watch it that much, but you'll see somebody, and all of a sudden the car will drive up backstage, and somebody will jump out and do this or do that, and the person in the ring will come back and take a count of 100 while he's out chasing the guy in the car and stuff like that. So I don't watch it anymore. I don't find any redeeming qualities in it. I'm very happy, and I think it's fortunate that the boys are making such a good payday, and they deserve it. And that's the best that I think I can say about both promotions. These guys are making great money now, and they deserve it.
You've wrestled on super cards, obviously super shows in the AWA. You've wrestled at WrestleMania, but the big question is what was the difference between the two? Like working on a super show in the AWA compared to the vibe and feel of a WrestleMania. I understand that to me, I agree it should be more about wrestling, but the entertainment aspect and the over the top bigness. Could you tell the difference, like clear cut as day?
Oh, gosh.
Okay.
Oh yeah, because Jimmy, when we went to WrestleManias, there was 20 different countries there with their news force.
Right.
All of a sudden you
Right.
see, you see people from Japan and London and Australia, and they were interested in, I'll never forget that when we were at the Superdome in Pontiac, Michigan, and it was WrestleMania 3, and it was Brian and I against the Sheik and Volkov. And during that match, Jim Duggan came in and more or less caused us to get disqualified. And we were supposed to be happy with that. We were supposed to, pat him on the shoulder and thank him for coming in and getting us disqualified. So that was Vince's way of introducing Jim Duggan at our expense to get him over. But the feel was incredible. I mean, and one thing I'll say is that we were supposed to originally go on second or third, and it wound up that they put us on in a semi final match, and Hulk and Andre were the last ones. And everybody was waiting to see Hulk and Andre. They didn't care about the Bees and Nikolai and Khosrow. So, it was great in the fact that those WrestleManias were so accepted and publicized, and that's due to Vince's connections and the promotions that he had, with Dick Ebersol and the production of the TV.
WrestleMania 3. Hogan and Andre. It happens to be our favorite match, my partner and myself, basically, because it was just, we were huge Hogan fans. The timing was right. We grew up with him in basically high school and stuff. So we get Hogan, Andre, the body slam, the 93,000. I'm really curious. Were the wrestlers looking at the match from the back? Because nowadays you see all this behind-the-scenes stuff. You see wrestlers watching important matches from the back and stuff. Were you guys like peeking out? Was anybody like peeking out watching Hogan Andre do something absolutely legendary? Okay, not a clinic, but my God, what a story that was. Were you guys watching?
Yeah, it was. And I think some were, looking, but they had some monitors back there that you could watch it.
Cool.
Without, sticking your head through the curtains. And,
cool.
It was hard seeing it that way because there were so damn many people, and you were at least 100 yards away from the ring at that where they had our locker rooms. But yeah, it was a great match, and Andre, he was such an athletic, big man, and he knew his position there, and Hulk was the golden goose. And he did him right, and it was a great match. And, let's face it, the WWE today is what it is today because of Hulk Hogan. Really.
Thank you.
He was the golden goose.
Thank you.
He was.
Truth.
I mean, he was, and not to say he was the greatest wrestler in the world.
Of course not.
But for what he had, the package he had, his look, his rap, his entrance, his athleticism in the ring. I mean, if you can go back and you can see him on YouTube wrestling Antonio Inoki in Japan, 2 or 3 years before he came to New York. And, here's a guy, 6'8", 300 pounds that could actually get down on the mat and wrestle. I mean, he was good. He impressed the heck out of me.
When I think of Jim Brunzell, I always think about the High Flyers with Greg Gagne, and I think about reading all those great stories against you and you two against Adonis and Ventura, who I became big fans of, and when they came up here, it was huge. But I didn't realize how much time you had spent in the WWE, and if you remember, Kurt Hennig started up here. And he was like enhancement talent for a while. He goes to the AWA and he starts building a name. And then he comes here. And then, of course, Terry Taylor's here. And I guess my question to you, you were around during that time too. There's a story out there that they discussed that the two gimmicks of Mr. Perfect and the Red Rooster were up for grabs. And they flipped the coin to see who was going to be who. Is that true?
I never heard that.
Never heard that. Okay.
It might have been, Kurt was a hell of a worker, and so was Terry. Terry was a better babyface than a heel, I think. But they wanted to make him this heel, and Kurt was a natural heel, and Kurt was a wrestling heel. And at one time, Kurt probably was one of the best in the top 3 best overall workers in the WWE, and he might have been in the top 3 in the whole world of wrestling.
Right.
You had to me, I look at these guys that I was fortunate enough to see and work with, and I see some guys, like Jake the Snake Roberts was incredible. His timing in the ring, everything he did looked good. Same with Bob Orton Jr., one of the best. I had plenty of time working with him. His timing and everything he did in the ring was incredible. And then and you have Ricky Steamboat, who was a great babyface. Oh God, incredible! And there was so many guys, and and then you have the character wrestlers, like Ric Flair, one in a million, and there's a lot of them that I probably didn't mention, and Bret Hart was excellent. But I mean, when you think of what made New York, New York, and the WWE, it was Hulk Hogan all the way.
Sure. So back to Taylor though, do you think that that gimmick was just so bad it just didn't get over, or do you think that he just couldn't get into it?
That gimmick.
Because I got to be personal, I really did like the Red
that
Rooster.
Gimmick
I
was
really
awful.
enjoyed the
Would
Red
you
Rooster.
Please tell him that gimmick was terrible, and if Mr. Perfect had been the Rooster, I would have squawked. Help me out, Jim.
Well,
please.
let me tell you something.
Brother.
This
Brother.
this is brother. Vince McMahon had a way of giving guys a gimmick that he was making fun of other people in the wrestling business.
Okay. Well,
he fired me 3 times.
Yeah, I was on that. I'm just getting to this. You worked for Vince. You worked for Vern Gagne. You worked for Crockett. Tell us the difference between the three of them.
Wait a minute, can I just get this in though?
Yeah,
real
sure.
quick?
Go ahead.
You're fired. You're fired. You're fired.
Yeah, he did it 3 times, Jim.
3 times.
Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
That's horrible, by the way.
Well,
Okay, tell us the difference between them. Oy.
Well, I'll tell you what, all of them had pretty good egos. Jim Crockett was not athletic, so he really didn't know what he was doing. He was just lucky that he was in a territory that he had such great talent, and at that time, George Scott was a good booker. Vern was hands-on left and right. I mean, he knew exactly what he wanted. He knew what he wanted in the matches. He knew how the guys were going to behave outside, and everybody realized their position in the AWA, and everybody got along. Everybody had great matches, and everybody made good money.
What makes a wrestler keep coming back for more pain?
Well, I think it's a feeling of satisfaction that you get, and accomplishment, and knowing in yourself, in your being, that you're good at what you're doing. And I think that enables us, like who would have known, after 20 some years, I would have, screwed up my body so bad. But, you look at the football players, and a lot of them guys are limping around too. And they didn't have a 25-year career, but they had a 15 or 12-year career. But I just, it was just what I was going to do. And I was fortunate to come out of it, with a wonderful wife and 2 great kids who I've never had any problem with. And like I say, I've had a real blessed life, and thank the good Lord for that. And, I've had all these replacements, but you always look at it, it could be worse.